Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on X at Movies TV Mad and on Instagram and on Threads at Movies TV Mad X. A very warm welcome to Thursday's edition of the DC Universe Daily. On today's show, I want to talk about ripple effects. What's this got to do with DC? Everything. What would have happened if Richard Donner wasn't fired from Superman 2? What would have happened if Zack Snyder wasn't fired after he finished principal photography for his Justice League movie? It's very, very interesting. I can give you solid, logical business reasons why Snyder was fired from the DC Extended Universe, even though I found that decision utterly bizarre, frustrating, and very tragic and sad. I still can give you good, from Wall Street's point of view, why Snyder couldn't continue at DC. But I can't give you one good business reason why the father and son production team, Ilya and Alexander Sulkind, fired Dick Donner as the director of Superman 2 after he directed Superman the movie, rewritten by his good friend Tom Mankiewicz. It was a hugely financially successful film, and nearly 50 years later, it still inspires people. Richard Donner trained Jeff Johns. Richard Donner, get his name right, Richard Donner literally trained Kevin Feige, the president of Marvel Studios. The man was a genius, a pioneer, and it turns out a pretty decent human being as well. So why did they fire Donner in the first place? Well, I'll explain to you why they fired Dick Donner. Because he wanted to make the best thing possible. And back then, it was very expensive to make a man fly, to make it look as good as possible, to have the best special effects. They didn't have computer-generated images back then. They wanted to make something a little bit more cheaper, the Sulkinds, because they knew they could make a lot of money. The less they spent, the more they made. So that's why they fired Donner. They didn't like Donner. Donner didn't like them. It was impossible for them to work with each other in the end. And both sides of this caused this problem. If only they could have sat down and talked. And they didn't. But let's be absolutely clear about this. Now, I know Ilya Sulkind, I think he's still alive. I don't know if he knows what's going on, if he's too old, if he suffers with senior dementia. I don't know. But if he ever watches this video, which I doubt, because nobody else does, let's be honest about it, you and your father must be the dumbest producers in the history of movie making and obviously Hollywood. The man made you a great Superman movie. He made the first superhero movie. It made money. It was a beautiful looking film. The world fucking loved it. And you fired him. You dumb pieces of shit. I'm sorry, there's no other way of saying it. Not only did you take profitability away from yourselves and you made it personal by firing him. Why did they fire him in the end? Because he said he wouldn't work with one of their stooges. He was interviewed by Variety and he said he wouldn't be seen, he didn't want to work with him again. Now, who knows what's true and if Donner would have worked with him again, who knows? But that's why they fired him. In terms of that, it was about them being loyal to their man and their bean counter. But they've got to be the dumbest fucking producers in the history of entertainment. Now, I respect the Sulkinds. They came up with an idea to make Superman. To come to that decision in the first place was historically, genius. But then you need someone to do it for you. Because Ilya Sulkind couldn't make a movie, couldn't write a movie. He wrote a script for a Superman 3 where Superman is shagging Supergirl. I fucking kid you not. Christopher Reeve and Helen Slater could have had a romantic relationship in Superman 3. He created this, Superman 3, which was a very cosmic adventure. It had Mixapixelic, it had Brainiac. I mean, he had the right ideas in putting all these elements in place. But come on, you can't have Superman and Supergirl being romantically involved. What a nut job. Anyway, actually, you should go and check out Minty Comics. Is it Minty Comic? He's a brilliant YouTuber, by the way, and he gives you little secret morsels about what happened behind the scenes of movies. So he's a great guy and very, very positive, unlike most content creators these days. Anyway, so they've got to be the dumbest producers of all time. But what would have happened if the Salkinds had a few more brain cells and kept Dick Donner on for Superman 2? Well, from interviews of Dick Donner, we already know. Him and Tom Mankiewicz, his writer, who also rewrote many Bond movies, and, the man was a genius, right? They had a plan for Superman 3, and maybe a Superman 4, and maybe even a Superman 5, and who knows, even a Supergirl movie. If they didn't fire Donner, it would have been Donner who would have come up with a Supergirl movie. Who knows, maybe even a Batman movie. He trained up the guy, Kevin Feige, who, is now the president of Marvel Studios, who's behind the Marvel Cinematic Universe. How do you think that happened? Because Dick Donner trained him up. There wouldn't be one superhero movie today if it wasn't for Dick Donner. Without Dick Donner's Smallville sequence in Superman the movie, the Smallville TV show would never have happened, and probably not even Arrowverse, because Arrowverse was inspired by the Smallville television show and used a lot of the people behind the scenes that show used. Smallville was pioneering for superhero TV. Everything Donner did with Superman the movie was a domino effect. As I said, the man was a genius and they fired him. Imagine where we would be with DC, CBMs, and TV even today if Donner was able to make 5 Superman movies, maybe a Supergirl movie, maybe even a Batman movie. We've discussed that before. Now, we'll get back to Donner a little bit later on. Now, let's talk about Zack Snyder, who had a plan for a 5-movie arc and was only able to make 3 movies. But of course, if Snyder doesn't go, you get Batfleck's Batman movie, written, directed, and starring Ben Affleck. Now we know that Ben Affleck is a great director and a really good writer as well, because he's done it to brilliant effect before. We could have had David Ayers, Harley and the Joker, Gotham City Sirens. There was plans for David to do that in his Suicide Squad universe. If Snyder stayed, we could have got a lot more than his 5-movie arc, not forgetting plans for a Man of Steel 2. But there's a bigger knock-on effect, of course, because after Man of Steel didn't make the billion they wanted, maybe they even wanted more than $1 billion from Man of Steel, Nolan and Goya probably write the script for the second DCEU movie, whether that's Man of Steel 2, whatever. That didn't happen because the studio was too reactive. As I've said to you before, arty-farty movies are made all the time, and they're not made for profit. More so today, everything's made for profit. But back in the day, these arty-farty movies that were being made, just let the artists go and do their thing. Because studios, when I was young, were half a profitable company and half of an art house. That's not really the case today. It's all about making money. Disney owned Marvel and Lucasfilm to make money, not to promote and push art. And it's the same with DC. Snyder's movies were about the art, the visual language of storytelling. They couldn't give a shit about that. That's what Snyder cared about. He didn't care about box office, but they did. Because these movies are being made to make money. And that's why they got rid of him. He was controversial, he was divisive, and that's why he went. But imagine if he doesn't go. So imagine if Dick Donner isn't fired, Snyder isn't fired, what happens, right? it's about ripple effects, right? Think about this, right? If I turn left instead of right, then my life and the world in general ends up differently, because everything we do has positive or negative consequences, not just for ourselves. There is no fate, there is no destiny. We are creating fate and destiny every day with the decisions we make, the directions we go in. That's how life works, right? So DC could have been by the time the MCU launched, we could have had about 10 Dick Donner CBMs. We could have had loads of DC movies in the Snyderverse, right? But prior to even Snyder, because the MCU started then. But even if they allowed Donner to cook, right, we would have been in a much healthier position. And by the time Donner retired as a filmmaker, as I say, we could have had at least 10 DC films, maybe more. Because he trained the people who pioneered, he trained the person who created or helped create and pioneered the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? So if you let him cook, if you allowed him to cook, he would have done the same thing for DC. And by the time we get to the DCEU, if that's a thing, then DC's in a much healthier position. I mean, you can ask a deeper question as we're talking about ripples. Would Snyder and Nolan and Goya even be there if Donner had been successful with 10 to 15 DC movies? Or would Donner have this kind of godfather role there where he was bringing in the producers and the directors and the filmmakers, right? Maybe he would have been influencing stuff a lot longer than after he was making the movies himself. This is why I'm talking about ripple effects. You just don't know. But if you allow Snyder to do what he wanted to do and allow Snyder to cook, at the very least, you would have had something very, very interesting that at least made a little bit of money, a little profit, because Man of Steel made a little profit. BVS made a little profit. Those movies did not lose money. You have to be fundamentally irrational to believe Man of Steel cost more than almost 700 million to produce, and market. It's not possible. It is not possible. And anyone who thinks that is a fucking idiot. If you think that Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice cost more than almost 900 million to produce, and market, you're dumb. Both those films would have made a slight profit, but not the profit. I concede, not the profit the studio wanted. I agree with that. But the movies were not flops. Flop is when you lose fucking money. Now, everything's called a flop these days, right? It's just a word people use. So imagine by now if Snyder would have been allowed to cook, right? Finish his arc, enable a flashpoint scenario for somebody new to come in. Hey, maybe James Gunn, whoever, right? So you've got Donner would have cooked for 15 movies. Zack would have cooked with David Ayer's Suicide Squad universe, with his own universe, with Affleck's Batman movie. The whole thing happens, right? You've got the Donnerverse, you've got the Snyderverse. Wow, you've got something very, very special because you allowed your visionary directors to do their thing. But that is not what Hollywood's about. I mean, we can take this up with Smallville as well. We can take this to Smallville because the same thing happened to Alfred Gough and Miles Miller, the creators of Smallville, the pioneers that inspired even the Arrowverse, as we've already discussed. They were driven out of Smallville after season 7, and the show went for another 3 seasons. Smallville should never have went for 10 seasons. I'm proud that one of my favourite adaptations in the Superman live-action mythos went for a decade, but it should never have done. This show should have went for 5 seasons and spun off to a Metropolis show. But of course you had an issue. The lead actor who played Clark Kent, Tom Welling, a guy I have so much respect for, didn't want to wear the costume, and I'm assuming wouldn't want to play Superman for another 5 years in a Metropolis TV show. But that's what should have happened. But what shouldn't have happened is that Gough and Miller left, because then their vision left with them. Don't forget, Michael Rosenbaum left with them, John Glover left with them, Kristen Krug left with them, right? So all the kind of Gotham Miller loyalists left with them as well. It's the same situation as Donna, right? Margot Kidder, who played Lois Lane, was so loyal to Dick Donner, she sacrificed her career in Hollywood for him by speaking out against the Salkinds on publications. That's why she was pretty much cut from Superman 3. She's at the beginning, she's at the end, she says, goodbye, I'm going to Bermuda. Oh, hello, Annette O'Toole, who played Lana Lang in Superman 3. Of course, then ended up playing Martha in Smallville, as most of you know. So, the knock-on effect from Smallville was that we didn't finish off the show in the right way. We can argue that seasons 8 to 10 actually had a lot of good stuff you wouldn't want to lose, like Absolute Justice, and I agree. There's a lot of good stuff in there, but ultimately, for me, the show didn't finish in a satisfying way. A key element happened when Welling was negotiating his seasons 9 and 10 contract, which was going to be his final contract, right? There were rumours that he was being a little bit difficult and maybe he would leave and they'd have to call the show something else, right? Because they needed that show. The CW were a rating-starved network. So I'm pretty sure that in that contract was that he would have a production credit, as he did with his final contract, and that he would never have to wear the Superman costume, which he didn't, because everything we saw with him in Superman was CGI. I think he may have put a Superman, the top part of Brandon Routh's Superman costume on, whatever. But we know what Gotham Miller wanted to do to end Smallville. They wanted Lex and Lana to feel frustrated by Clark when he leaves to become Clark Kent and embrace his Superman Kryptonian heritage. We know that, and we know we would have seen him in the costume flying over Smallville and probably flying to Metropolis, wherever. It would have been a grandiose ending. The ending that Gotham Miller's Smallville deserved. But they fell out with the CW. And I have evidence of this because basically there was some kind of legal proceedings over the rights of Smallville or whatever happened or monies or whatever. There was a court battle between WBTV and, Miller Goth Inc., which was Ours and Miles' production company, right? So I know they fell out, and that's why Gotham Miller left. Gotham Miller, when season 7 premiered, said they would never want to outstay their welcome in terms of the show. And we were talking about season 7. I remember reading Sci-Fi Now. I used to go in W.H. Smith's and read the magazines, naughty, without paying for them. And I remember them saying that season 7 was going to be the final season. But then there was a Writers Guild of America strike. After that strike, they came back with a great arc because Michael Rosenbaum was leaving. They come up with the Genius Veritas arc. Let me say it again. The Genius Veritas arc. But again, it's the ripple effect. If Gotham Miller don't leave, we get a better series finale of Smallville. In the end, the animals took over the zoo. Actors like Tom Welling and Alison Mack were able to dictate how their characters' stories ended. No Superman costume. Oh, Chloe can't die. Oh, she can't end up in a mental asylum. She can't have a compelling ending. No, she's got to end up with Green Arrow and reading their son, or whoever's son that bloody well is, a comic book, right? In the end, it's disappointing. I don't think the Smallville series finale is trash, but I felt it was a series finale to the final 3 seasons and not the whole 10 seasons. So there's a lot of issues, and John Glover as fucking Darkseid, oh my god, it was fucking ridiculous. They killed off Lex Luthor, so they had to find a way to bring him back so, he could be part of the law when Clark becomes Superman. The whole thing, in the end, was a mess because Al and Miles, the geniuses that gave us Smallville, left. So you've got Donna fired. You've got Snyder driven out. You've got Gotham Miller driven out. It's funny, this happens a lot with DC. But to be clear, this happens a lot in the entertainment industry. You've got the business side. You've got Wall Street versus the creatives who have a pure, motive to give the audience something good. But Hollywood, the business, don't have any pure motives despite them pretending that they do officially. So 3 great examples. But if you create that ripple effect and say, what if these guys just stayed? Things would have ended up in a better way. I find this very, very interesting. I remember when Smallville ended, I was so fucking angry. I wanted Alan Miles to come back. I wanted series 8, 9 and 10 to be deleted from the canon and for them to do an 8th and final epic season using John Glover, Christine Krug, and bringing Alan Miles back and Michael Rosenbaum and finishing it properly, because that's what should have happened. Once the writer's strike happened in the middle of season 7 and they felt they couldn't finish Smallville off then, and the CW didn't want it to be finished off, once they couldn't do it, everyone should have come back to an 8th and final season and finished Smallville the Alan Miles way. But they didn't. We had a new, head of the CW called Dawn Ostroff, who made a speech about shaping the CW for young women. Yes, the virus started even back then. So, Smallville was fucked because Alan Miles were betrayed. It's a bit like Kevin, getting all the bloody names wrong today, aren't I? But Kenny Johnson created the V sci-fi series. He came up with a great mini-series. But he was forced out by Warner Brothers and whoever else, and they came back and did V the Final Battle, which was okay, but nothing like what he was planning for the series. It happens all the time. And who is robbed in the end? The creatives are stabbed in the back, right? They lose the thing that they created. Imagine you paint Mona fucking Lisa, right? And they scribble out some of the Mona Lisa and they start painting elements of the Mona Lisa in. That's what they do. So the ripple effect is that things change. The ripple effect is if none of those things happened, us, the fans, the viewers, the consumers, would have had something a lot better. But we were robbed. In the end, after Gotham Miller left, Smallville became very Tumblr, very shipper-centric. I have great issues. I've got in great battles with these shippers. I think if you want to be a shipper, that's beautiful. But shippers dictate what happens to a serious show. In the end, Smallville becomes a bit of a fucking joke because we're going on about Chloe. We've got to have a Chloe scene or they create on fucking social media. Oh, we didn't really get a Chloe scene this week. So fucking what? This is about Superman. I love Lois and Clark's relationship, but this is a pre-Superman fucking story. Who do you think you are to dictate something, ruin something that I loved, you freaking nut jobs? And it happened with Arrow. We had brilliant first 2 series of Arrow. What happened? The shippers got involved with Olicity. Look what fucking happened. The shippers ruined that show as well. And that's what happens. But this is what happens. You get rid of the people who create the thing, right? You drive the good people out and the bad people take over. I mean, to be fair to Dickie Lester, who took over from Dick Donner, he made a really good Superman 2. I really enjoy Superman 2. It's one of the best acts, third act, should I say, in superhero history. The first supervillain battle I ever saw. To be fair to the man, but Dick Donner had big plans, as did Tom Mankiewicz. That was taken away because when they made Superman 3, it wasn't as good. Superman 4 was a bloody mess. Then Superman was finished. But Dick Donner and Tom Mankiewicz could have given us 5 epic fucking Superman movies and we lost out. They took Snyder away from us. We lost out. I believe, and a lot of DC fans won't agree with me, but I think we all lost out in driving Snyder out. Once you start on something, you've got to finish something. And being reactive and getting rid of these people isn't a good thing. But the whole point of this video today is to show you the ripple effect. So now with all those people driven out, whether it's Donner, whether it's Snyder, they drive Snyder out, they try and retool it with Justice League, with the guy who gave the world the first Avengers, which was highly successful. They bring in Joss Whedon, not to do something of his own, but to kind of take Zack's movie and inject colour and gags into it. Didn't work. Then we had the whole, the Flash reboot idea, which they tried. And Hamada's idea was gone. They cancelled that. Now Gunn's there. to reboot the whole thing and inject energy. There's a difference between Gunn and Snyder. They trust James Gunn to do his thing, be very, very arty and creative, but bring them in top dollar at the same time. That's the difference between Gunn and Snyder. They believe Gunn can make them money. And they knew that Snyder's a lunatic. Snyder doesn't care about making studios money. He just cares about putting forward his artistic integrity, his artistic vision. That's the difference. And in the modern day, it just isn't about artistic integrity, right? For example, Denis Villeneuve, I saw an extended, I think we all did on the internet, an extended clip from Dune Part 2. It's a beautiful, artistically made movie. It looks fantastic. I love the first movie. But here's the thing. As arty and brilliant as that movie is, it also made a hell of a lot of fucking money. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a Dune Part 2. We had to wait a long time for that announcement for the second movie because they were weighing it up. And obviously you have to decide what you're going to spend and is it worth doing it? Did we make enough money? So it made money. It didn't make record-breaking money, but it made money and they were happy with it in the end. And if you want a Dune Part 3, you better go and watch Dune Part 2. It's all about money. So, and you know, Denis Villeneuve is very similar in a lot of ways to the way his movies look, how artistic he is, to Zack Snyder. But his movie made money. That's just the difference. That Snyder doesn't even think about the money. He even antagonizes a lot of people, right, who don't like him as a filmmaker. And we already know that. And that's the difference. Now in James Gunn, when he makes a movie, you know, he gets notes, he chucks them away, he barely listens. He just does what he wants to do, or he doesn't do the job. Simple as that. So he's going to do his thing for Superman Legacy, Creature Commandos and beyond for DC Universe if Superman Legacy is successful. If it's not, there'll be nothing to do. You know, he'll be finished. His career will be over and God knows what he'll be doing after that. But that's, you know, they believe that he's artistically sound, and they're going to allow him to run DC Studios with Saffron and do what he wants, as long as he brings in the money. That's the thing. If you're going to bring in the money, you can do anything you want artistically. If you don't bring in the money, you don't. Now, it's very different now at Marvel Studios. They were the kind of rules when Disney first bought Marvel Studios, but then they decided to get very political. And they ruined the MCU through their political propaganda and ideology. Not because, you know, in terms of Feige's creativity, Feige has been hampered by Disney's political obsession, right? And Feige had to get, you know, you can hear Feige going, oh yeah, we want more women than men, blah, 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 blah. He's just saying what they want him to say. At the end of the day, he's just another fucking Disney employee, you know? And that's the thing. So I don't really blame Feige for what's happened to the MCU. I blame Disney. That's who ruined the MCU. As a DC fan, I do take a little bit of pleasure in seeing that universe being destabilized. But it's also sad because I enjoyed a lot of those movies. And it was a fun time for Marvel fans. And it was a fun time for a lot of people watching Superman the movie and thinking, just imagine if they allowed Dick Donner to cook. Just imagine if they allowed Zack Snyder to cook. You started with Zack Snyder. You should have allowed him to finish. But the bigger lesson is with Dick Donner, because we would have been the champions of the comic book franchise right now. So by the time the Marvel Cinematic Universe started, they would have been playing catch up. And the only thing they would have done at this point is catching up with DC. But they're the ones who launched the franchise. They come up with something DC had never had in live action, in terms, apart from the DCAU. We spoke about Bruce Timm yesterday and what a pioneer and a genius he was. But apart from that, you know, we're playing catch up with Marvel right now. You know, Bob Iger did announce at the Disney kind of financial call they're going to make a lot less Marvel stuff, movies and TV. I think you're going to see very little of the D+ Marvel shows, probably 1 or 2 movies a year, maybe in the long run or the short term, maybe a movie, one Marvel movie a year. And I think this is what Gunn's looking to do as well, because nobody wants to see 4 or 5, 6 comic book movies a year. But it is interesting to think and fantasize about what we could have got from Donner and Mankiewicz and what we could have got right now if we allowed Snyder to cook. Where would we be right now if Snyder was allowed to cook? I guess we'll never know.